A city built over a cave. The Knoxville, Tennessee Tribune publishes an account of a curious accident which occurred the night before on Reservoir Hill, when a portion of the bottom of the North Reservoir dropped out, precipitating 500,000 gallons of water into hitherto unknown cavernous depths below. We visited Reservoir Hill yesterday and found the North Reservoir entirely empty and a great hole in the bottom at the southeast corner, just as described yesterday. The water had disappeared, and there was nothing to indicate the exact course it had taken. The hole seemed to be an opening between two ledges of limestone rock. In this case, the cost of making the bottom of the reservoir secure will not be very large. Yesterday morning, muddy waters was discovered issuing from a spring on First Creek in East Knoxville. Through this spring is half a mile from the reservoir. It is doubtless the outlet for a portion of 500,000 gallons of water which dropped into the yawning chasm of the mountain the night before. Of course, much of the water is yet in the subterranean vaults and will not run out. It is not generally known that Knoxville is built over a mammoth cave. It is doubtless a fact that there are natural subterranean passages beneath the city. Their extent is unknown, and it is uncertain to what extent their existence endangers the city or a portion of it. It is asserted that one subterranean passage beneath the city was several years ago explored to the extent of half a mile. It is also claimed that during the war, a refugee wandered several days in the caves under the city, traveling several miles in all. There is an entrance to a cave near the river a few hundred yards below Second Creek. This is said to lead into a great cavern under College Hill, and this is supposed to be connected with the mysterious vaults under the older portion of the city. In different locations in the older part of the city between First and Second Creeks, openings to the caverns have been discovered by the sinking of pits and the dropping through of the bottoms of cisterns. On State Street, in the rear of the Haiti House, is a cavern of unknown dimensions which was discovered when the foundations were being dug for the building. On the same street farther north, the same or other chasm has been dug into. On or near Union Street, not far from the market house, the bottom dropped out of a cistern a few years ago, and the water sunk to unknown depths. In the rear of the billiard hall, nearly opposite the Tribune office, there is a bottomless pit, or one which is very deep. A few years ago, the bottom dropped out of a cistern at Lamar House, and many of the guests were frightened for fear the hotel would sink into a chasm. Perhaps the first intimation of the hollowness of Knoxville's foundation was received a number of years ago when the bottom dropped from the cistern at the Franklin House. Yeah, so there are many of these. I don't have full articles pulled up for all of them. So that was Knoxville. Let's do a Nashville one, but you can say this pretty much for almost all of them. Pretty crazy, right? And they weren't just saying, they're not just dirty caves. A lot of them are I would say perhaps originally um, shaped by nature in some way or another, but they eventually were covered with stone and brick, and that these tunnels went on and on and on. Just as we pointed out in the Missouri episode, these mounds are connected by a subterranean highway system, and I would say that these big cities are all incorporated in this because these cities are built on ancient sites, and these ancient sites are connected to this underground. Subterranean Nashville. Some months ago, we had occasion to write at considerable length various accounts of strange discoveries made in the immediate vicinity of Nashville and up the banks of the Cumberland as far as Stone River, showing conclusively enough that this vicinity must have been the site of a once large and magnificent city. It is now generally conceded by the few learned men among us, formerly, beyond the period of European records, a mighty race dwelt on this continent, and that vast cities and an immense population flourished on the hills and plains now covered with what we consider the primeval woods. Now, I couldn't think of a better article to kind of conclude this episode as a kind of buttoning up of what exactly we've been showing, that under these primeval forests, you're finding huge stone cities, huge mounds that are far more complex and are more pyramidal than they are. And they're not just burial chambers, and that they go deep, deep, deep underground. and that I strongly suggest that there is a subterranean system connecting all of these cities, and that the quote deep underground military bases and chambers are takeovers of an ancient subterranean realm that existed for thousands of years. Where was I? Again, beyond the period of European records. I mean, that's pretty far, but we know it goes far beyond that because we've had so many that say when Europe was a infant, when Europe was in its infancy, America was at its peak. A mighty race dwelt on this continent, and that vast cities and an immense population flourished on the hills and plains now covered with what we consider the primeval woods. I know I said that already, but worth reading again. Nashville, in particular, is rich in the remains of the mighty race. 2 days ago, an adventurous student entered the cave which is known to run under our city. In West Nashville, near the residence of Mr. Hines on Knoll Street, and having traveled in a southerly direction for over a mile, until he found himself somewhere under the hill of which Fort Negley stood. Again, you guys, we've talked about star forts and mound systems being connected. Now he takes a quote cave system tunnel and it goes right under the star fort. Not a coincidence. He commenced a rigid exploration of the interior of the cavern as he returned. He found earthen vases in profusion, some of them capacious enough to hold a barrel of water, and of undoubted Eastern style of construction. Yeah, what's Eastern style? Greek? Because we know that the oldest Greek pottery is found here in the Americas. Quote Greek. Phoenician. He also found a stone coffin or sarcophagus 9 feet long on the outside and 7 feet long on the inside. It was laid upon a natural ledge of rock and bore certain characters on the side of which he was unable to decipher. I wonder what those characters were. Possibly Phoenician? Block Hebrew? Arabic? Hmm. Egyptian? Well, those are all from the same root. Within was nothing but a small sprinkling of dust and about half an inch pasty mud. He also found regular steel knives, with very long handles of some sort of composite material, which he assures us is pottery. On these, the graver characters are yet quite legible. He brought forth from this grave of centuries several specimens of his discoveries, which are no less curious than wonderful. He is making preparations for a series of explorations, which he intends to extend over several weeks. They will be undertaken with a view of writing an exhaustive and correct account of all the archaeological remains of which are to be found around the city. Well, you can guarantee that wasn't published. 1869. Um, and then what else do we have? I want to finish with a Stone Lake. I did that one already. Tennessee. Here's more on the Tennessee Pygmies. This is a big one. Yep, let's do the Stone Lake. As we're wrapping up here, you guys, I love you all so much. 157 of you. I don't know many more. We'll see this further down the line. I wouldn't have been able to keep this going if it wasn't for you guys. So I'm in Middle Tennessee. I've been to Old Stone Fort and its circular mound. I would love a map or a list of these amazing finds. Yeah, a map. There's people have made maps. They're often listed under mounds, and I've tried to make a distinct correlation between the mound builders and that there are several markers of distinct ages of man, and that the quote mound builders were perhaps not what we've been told as far as correctly identifying these cultures, and that these burial chambers often were built on top of sacred sites and that predated these cultures. That's one of the most common markers of this. But as far as a list or anything like that, I mean, I have to point you towards, my Twitter, but I've been posting less on there as it's just cumbersome and not very effective. So if you enjoy this material, you just kind of have to watch through some of my other episodes and you can see the correlations I make here. They exist strongly all over. I have some excerpts I wanted to look at real quick before I get too far. Hmm. Give me 1 second, guys. I had a post I had made, and I almost forgot to share it. Here's an interesting one. 1882, ancient Tennessee. Ancient mummies are found in East Tennessee caves with sandals petrified to their feet. Timber in our forests disclose wounds inflicted near the heart with sharp edged tools long before Columbus quite wearing petticoats. Triangle shaped coins of unknown alloy of the date of 1215 are plowed up in our fields. Fossil remains of animals long since extinct are found petrified on our hillsides. Dried brick prepared of clay and cut straw are unearthed many feet below the surface of Earth, where they are supposed to have remained for many centuries. I think this is the one. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Mr. Hirsch, an extensive mining operator, has secured options on the celebrated Ducktown copper mines. Has secured from Polk County. He states the laborers have discovered a prehistoric city near Mineral Bluff in the copper regions. Many evidences of Indian occupation have already been unearthed. The first and principal discovery was that of an ancient stone wall. It was traced for a mile. Traces of houses were also found during the brief investigation made and pottery found. Mr. Hirsch, who has visited the buried cities of the same race of people in Arizona, recognized it as of a similar character to the relics discovered there. There is a tradition handed down from the Indians that there was here a ruined city and that the vast treasures had been found. The work of excavation will be continued. Again, the tradition is that there was a ruined city. So they came here and there was a ruined city. And the important thing to take away from this is Mr. Hirsch, who had visited the buried cities of the same race of people in Arizona, recognized it as a similar character to the relics discovered there. I meant to share this earlier when we were correlating the buried cities and connecting the dots with Arizona, and I just had forgot about it. I have stuff scattered all over. So some of the stuff I had just pulled up just to kind of get ready for it here, and I poorly organized it. Um, this one talks about um, a different type of pygmy. The high water of the recent flood washed about 4 feet of earth from 10 or 15 acres of land lying along the Tennessee River on the farm of Mr. James Prater near Louisville in Blount County. About 2 feet of soil was removed from the same ground by the high tide of 1867. When the water subsided after the last flood, a strange spectacle was presented. The whole of the denuded area was covered with skeletons. Some were straight, some reclining, some doubled up, and some in sitting posture. There were the osseous forms of infants, of children, and of full grown persons. Mr. Prater has counted over 1,000 forms. The steamer city of Knoxville, on her last trip, brought some of these bones to Chattanooga and to Knoxville presented us with the skull. Persons who have lived in the vicinity of this mysterious cemetery for 65 years never heard of any human bodies being discovered there. The skeletons, we understand, are not found in a mound nor in what appears to be an artificial formation of earth. We understand one or more mounds were partially washed away in Meigs County, disclosing skeletons, stone hatchets, pipes, implements, and Indians. There was one more I wanted to do. I think was it dwarf. I can't remember. Oh, see, this was in Missouri. Pygmy graveyard. Here's one. This is the one, the other one I wanted to read. This is a different graveyard from the one I had shared earlier, where they found the people in copper or um, in stone coffins with the animals in the little containers above their heads. What's the date on this one? This is 1876. An ancient graveyard of vast proportions has been found in Coffee County. It is similar to those in White County and other places in Tennessee. So we were just listing some of those off. but is vastly more extensive and shows that the race of pygmies who once inhabited this country were very numerous. The same peculiarities of position observed in the White County graves are found in these. The writer of the letter says some considerable excitement and curiosity took place a few days since near Hillsborough, Coffee County, on James Brown's farm. A man was plowing in a field which had been cultivated many years, plowing up a man's skull and other bones. After making further examination, they found that there were about 6 acres in this graveyard. They were buried in a sitting or standing position. Their bones show that they were a dwarf race of people about 3 feet high. It is estimated that there were about 75,000 to 100,000 buried there. Holy shit. 75,000 to 100,000 buried dwarfs, right? Or pygmies. They say dwarf race, right? And we're not dealing with the 18-foot tall pygmies. These people were 3 feet high. So it's like, again, why I made the correlation earlier in that first long article I read that was this Tolkien's Middle Earth. We have pygmies, we have dwarfs, we have giants, all within what, just a few square miles of each other. Holy smokes. You got men over 8 feet, over 9 feet, right? You got the cave systems under Nashville, under Louisville, or I'm sorry, Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, right? Subterranean worlds under all three of those cities. You have giants that are found under those cities, and you have pygmies, dwarfs, and giants all in a similar time frame, all buried within just a few square miles of one another.